And we will estimate how much money AEW makes. About $100 million last year, 2022. What is revenue? What does that word mean?
That is just total gross income coming in. And that's before expenses, right? So that would be all your ticket sales, your TV deals, your merchandise, all that. But then you actually start getting into the profits when you take away expenses.
Let's say I run a Patreon business and I have some subscribers who pay $5 a month for their subscriptions, which we're very grateful for. And Patreon charges them $5. Patreon takes a little percentage of that for themselves.
Yes.
And then they give me $4 and change. What should I record as revenue? $5 or $4.25? Which one?
It should be the $4.25.
There's gross revenue and then there's net revenue. This is the money that the business actually collects. I think the Observer reported a higher number than we're going to reach here. And I think what the Observer is reporting could be gross revenue as opposed to net revenue. So this is what we've got here. I've estimated $154 million in net revenue for AEW. $154 million. So remember last year was about $100 million. And now I can get to $154 million. How do you estimate this? Why should I think that this is a somewhat accurate estimate? Why should anybody believe this? AEW, much like WWE, makes their revenue from similar channels. Obviously, WWE makes about how much revenue did they make in a recent year? Last year, let's say?
Probably a few hundred million, right?
A few hundred million?
Yeah, I'm wrong on that. I know.
Over $1 billion.
$1 billion. Okay, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I don't know why 400 million was sticking out.
In terms of revenue,
yeah, for sure.
Again, much like WWE, they make the vast majority. AEW makes the vast majority of their revenue from media, the wrestling media. That's what that means, right? It's the wrestling media paying that. Oh no, because AEW pays the wrestling media. Is that true? Is that what the?
No.
Oh, okay. So they make the vast majority of their revenue from the sale of video, of live broadcasts, of pay-per-views. They do some sponsorships as well. There's a little bit of digital advertising. Their biggest TV partner is who?
Warner Brothers Discovery.
David Zaslav, who says Tony Khan's doing a great job. He told Chad, your son is effing killing it. Their second biggest TV market is the UK, ITV. Their next biggest TV market, now we're getting into some gray territory. I think it's probably India. I'm going to assume it's India because that's the next biggest market. Actually, India is WWE's number 2 market. I really doubt it's AEW's number 2 market, but maybe it's its number 3 market. And then we have Canada, and then we have the fight deal, and then I've thrown this other bucket together, which I did itemize into further pieces. This is how I broke down just the television segment. So we have WBD, and I've estimated about $63 million from WBD in the year. Why do you think that? Because we know that AEW's deal, according to Tony Khan's comments himself, is $175 million over 4 years. That's $43.75 million per year. Assuming there's annual escalators here that are somewhere in the neighborhood of 10% each year, they would be getting about $50 million just for Dynamite, Rampage, and Battle of the Bells. And now I know some of this revenue that they get from WBD as part of their television revenues is not just rights fees. I know some of it is advertising revenue. I'm going to assume it's all up to the same degree. They added a new show in the middle of this year, Collision. I asked Tony, is there additional revenue for this Collision show, or are you just taking all these expenses on yourself? And no, he said that they are getting more revenue for that. So the revenue that they're getting for this, I think, has to be at least enough to cover the costs, which I imagine is somewhere in the neighborhood of $25 million per year. Now, we didn't have a full year of Collision, of course, so I'm going to prorate that. That gives us about $13 million that I'm going to estimate went towards the addition of Collision. That brings us to $63 million. No, they didn't get anything extra for Rampage. It was part of the original deal in January 2020. Okay. And then I've itemized the rest of these. You can look at it. I'm not going to read through the numbers. Just over $70 million in TV revenue is what I'm estimating here. We move on to another segment within the media division. I don't know if this is how they really categorize it, but I'm going to categorize it. The media division, pay-per-view, their next biggest business in the media division. How many pay-per-view buys did this company sell? I've gone through each pay-per-view. Yeah, I've assumed that Revolution sold about 135,000, Double or Nothing about 140, Forbidden Door about 140, All In about 190, All Out about 100, Wrestle Dream about 90, Full Gear, about 120. I'm going to assume this event that has not even occurred yet, World's End, is going to do about 120. I'm going to say about 65% of those buys are domestic at a certain price point, which is $50. And then they take that money based on all those price points and all those buys for each event. We get to just over $19 million in pay-per-view business. Over 1 million buys, by the way. Did not include Ring of Honor here. I think it's an interesting accounting question to ask. Should Ring of Honor be included? There are larger business questions involved in that I'm not informed to answer. So let's go back to our big table here. Okay, we have sponsorships calculated a slight increase over what I estimated last year, like 2.3 million. Digital advertising, I think, is largely YouTube. I made an estimate based on the number of views that I can find on Social Blade, $750,000 in YouTube money. We get a media division number of $93 million just in media. So the majority of their business is media. We will get to their ticketing business. It looks like they're going to sell. I'm going to estimate that they're going to sell about 500,000 tickets at an average ticket price of $68. How did you get to that? Okay, I broke this down by event type. We've got 5 house shows. We've got 52 Dynamites. We've got 27 collisions. We've got 3 tapings that were just for Rampage or Battle of the Belts. We've got 7 pay-per-views that were not all in. And we got 1 special pay-per-view that was all in. I went into Polestar to try to get an idea what the average ticket sold price might have been for each event type. Because obviously you're gonna have different event types, they're gonna have different normal ticket prices. So we do have that report that we did on house shows on the First House Rules, where the average ticket sold was, I believe, $34. Looking at some of the Polestar data, I assumed that Dynamite average ticket sold is gonna be $52, for Collision, $50, almost the same. $34 million in ticket revenue, about 500,000 tickets sold. That gives us live events. And then we have the third division, consumer products, which is where merchandise sales are, where licensing is for your action figures, for your video game, your first console video game, for your trading cards, for maybe some other miscellaneous stuff. For venue merch, I'm assuming that $12 per ticket sold is being spent. Some real guesses here with licensing. Jazzwares, action figures, I'm putting at about 2 million. Console game, I don't know, 12 million. Upper Deck, I don't know, 1.5 million. 26.6 million overall for consumer products brings us to 154 million. That gives us revenue. And this is what their revenue picture looks like. Here's a tree map, overwhelmingly media, and nearly equal parts live events and consumer products. Much like WWE's business, overwhelmingly, this is a media business. I've done these estimates now for 4 years. 2020, I estimated revenue of $63 million. Pandemic year. 2021, with about a half of a year back on the road, $84 million. Last year, 2022, $100 million. And this year, 154. So these revenues continue to grow. I mean, you're adding a lot more media in this year. You're adding more events because you did a half a year Collision, more content, more events, more revenue. How does this compare to WWE? We're expecting, with Q4 not yet reported, $1.3 billion for WWE. Compare that to AEW's 154. A fraction, more than 10% now, but a small fraction of WWE's revenue. Now, are you ready for this, Chris Skull? We have to ask the question: yes or no? Is AEW profitable, Chris Skull?
I would say currently no.
Do you hate AEW? Why are you saying that? Are you just an AEW hater?
No, it takes time for a business to actually become profitable. It can take decades sometimes.
It's a startup. If you think of it as a tech startup, that would make like Shad Khan the venture capitalist here, I guess. So is AEW profitable? Almost certainly not. So this is my estimate. So I've never done this before because I've always felt like, I mean, how do you determine profitability? Obviously, you just take the revenue, you subtract the expenses. I've never tried to estimate the expenses because I don't feel as certain about it. We're taking a stab at it for the first time today. I mean, those years are probably not profitable either. Anyway, this is what I did. I said, okay, let's try to do the expenses here. We got all these events. We got 5 house shows, 52 Dynamites, 27 Collisions, 3 Rampages / Battle of the Belts, 7 pay-per-views, 1 all-in. How much does it cost to put on these shows? I'm going to say operating expense for a house show is about $400,000. I'm going to say a Dynamite taping costs about $650,000. Same for a Collision. Same for another TV taping of a Rampage / a Battle of the Belts. I'm going to say a pay-per-view costs about $1.1 million if it's not all in. But if it's all in, I'm going to say maybe it costs $3 million. Okay, you just multiply those across by the number of events that they did. You get $66 million in operating expense for their events. $66 million. Again, how much revenue do they generate in this year? I think about 154. So we got 66 expense. So far at the moment, they've got more revenue than expense, but we got more expense to add. Okay, total talent comp. How much is the average AEW wrestler making in annual compensation? That is a key question.
Yeah, there's no clear answer out there.
So I just have to.
You would think six figures, but you don't know. Yeah,
it's absolutely six figures. I'm super confident.
But you don't know where that lands. You know,
I'm confident that it's well over six figures. I'm confident that there are wrestlers in AEW who are making seven figures. So it's somewhere between that. I'm going with 450. If you change this number, you get some big differences here, right? This is
I feel like that's fair. That sounds fair.
Okay. Yeah. This is a big lever. If you assume the average annual compensation for the AEW wrestler is $450,000, you get. I just went into their website and I said, how many roster members are on this website? And I included announcers and referees in this as well. There's 188 of them. So you get about $85 million in annual compensation for talent. You add that to the $66 million in event expense we just itemized. Then I looked at WWE's expenses as a percentage of their revenues for these other areas, which are consumer products operating, which is about 60% of the revenues. SG&A. Everybody knows and loves SG&A, don't they? The selling, general, and admin expense. What does this consist of? For one thing, marketing videos and marketing materials that you make, but also paying your staff. General and admin is about 10% of WWE's revenue. Marketing, selling is about 6% of WWE's revenue. So I just plugged those in as a factor of what I estimated was AEW's revenue. We get $15 million for general and admin. We get another $9 million for marketing and selling expense for a total estimated expense for AEW of $191 million. $191 million estimated expenses. Estimated revenue is $154. That gives us profit. Is that what we're going to call this result? Profit. There is not a profit metric. There are many different kinds of profit metrics. Just to subtract revenue from expenses gives you a metric called EBITDA. EBITDA. But EBITDA is an acronym that stands for what, Chris Gullo?
Oh man, earnings.
Earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation. And amortization. I'm not going to try to estimate what AEW's interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization are, but I will estimate their EBITDA, and we do get to a loss of $34 million. Am I confident in this number? Not really. I'm confident that it's a negative number. If their loss is in the range of $40-50 million, and they get their TV rights doubled with minimal added expense, they probably become profitable. With a strong upgrade, I think they'll be profitable. And that would start, any payments under a new deal would not start until 2025, by the way. Moral of the story, they're not profitable. Pretty confident in that. Pretty confident they could be profitable and will be profitable if WBD doubles their rights fees. Will they? Well, I would expect so. Especially considering not just here's what we're delivering. We all assume and expect that there's going to be some streaming rights as part of this, right? Because they have next day rights that are not monetized. Perhaps pay-per-view is a part of this. They have a library that doesn't have a ton of value, but is another piece of a deal.